Hey guys, it's me, Dennis Wynn, and Weston Lenhart, and we will be presenting our project to Period 3 for the AP Government class with Mr. Schweitzer. Now, this agenda setting project will primarily focus on immigration. So, with that being said, Weston?
All right, so agenda setting usually starts with the people. The people want something done, so what do? Well, they go to the ballot and they vote for representatives who agree with what they are trying to, with what the people want. And so once they're in office, in our case, they will either resist any forms of immigration restriction or they will try to implement any forms of immigration restriction. This applies to the local level, right? When you're trying to elect maybe a governor or something, but it also applies to the national level or the national government because the president is the ultimate agenda setter um, with Congress approval.
Now, moving on from that, we have to identify these key factors in the agenda setting. So, one of the main ones would be public opinion, whether or not the American people support and or are against the different immigration laws that are trying to be passed and immigration in general. Moving on from that, we also have the economy, which is a very, very key factor in whether or not bills and laws will be passed. Now, this would be in regards to whether or not there is an actual benefit or detriment to the economy regarding the immigrant workers that are already here, and the projections that will be shown in the future. Aside from that, we also have to take into account the party and congressional support for this certain topic. So, say if someone in the federal government did not want it to pass, it could be very hard for it to actually get to the floor or on the agenda in this case. Again, moving on from that, we have to understand and identify some of the relevant special interest groups, at least in regards to immigration. Some of those would be the American Immigration Lawyers Association, the Americans for Immigrant Control, the Americans for Legal Immigration, and the English First. Moving on from that, we have to look at some of the key agencies involved in creating policies that would reach the floor and eventually the government that would involve immigration yet again. What a surprise. Now, these different agencies would play a role in the enforcement of immigration laws. And usually you'd see a lot of this happening in the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Department of Homeland Security, Selective Service, and the Social Security Administration. After looking at these different agencies, we can look at the key congressional committees involved in the passing and general regards to immigration policy. In the House, we have the House Committee on the Judiciary, which does take into account these immigration laws and whether or not they reach the floor in the House and whether or not they're considered and voted on. In the Senate, we have the Subcommittee on Immigration and Border Security, which is also essentially the same thing, just as the bicameral, what is it? Bicameral opposite or bicameral partner of the House. Moving on, Weston.
Right. So some relevant court decisions in regards to immigration. One of them is Plyer v. Doe, which Plyer v. Doe had to deal with the Equal Protection Clause, which states that quote that no state shall quote deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws end quote. So the Supreme Court ruled that public schools must educate non-citizen children. They ruled that under the idea that illegal immigrants were considered a person and that they were still within the jurisdiction of the United States. Another Supreme Court case is Yickwo v. Hopkins, which the Supreme Court ruled that the 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection, which is applied to citizens as well as immigrants. And then more currently, the state of Washington, uh, in a district court case, ruled that President Trump's executive order on immigration um, was not constitutional, and they blocked it. And then so the general effects of federalism on agenda setting is pretty big because you can have states like California. California is going to have a very different uh, interaction with immigration as compared to someone who's like in the middle of the country. Uh, so California has a lot of immigration, so they are probably going to be more, or they could be more for immigration, right? Because they're Democratic. That's pretty obvious. Whereas if you look at Texas, they're probably going to be for, they'll probably be against it. And then when you look at what the national government is, or the federal government, which is a Republican-held Congress and then obviously a Republican president, there's going to be conflict between Democratic states like California, Oregon, Washington, with the federal government, which you can see in the state of Washington v. Trump, right? Washington, a Democratic state, they blocked the executive order. Thanks for watching.